Hello, everyone. My name is Kay Bergner, and I am the Assistant Publisher and Associate Director of Publishing Strategy here at Sourcebooks. I've been at Sourcebooks for about 15 years now, and during that time, I've worked very closely with our CEO and publisher, Dominique Rocca. I know that fighting book bans is something that's very important to her, as it is to all of us. And one of the things that we've all discovered is how book bans affect our entire communities. Hello, everyone. My name is Kay Bergner, and I am the Assistant Publisher. Book banners may be targeting and harassing teachers and librarians, but their reach touches all of us. With that in mind, Dominique reached out to Charlie Rejsek, the CEO of Book People, an amazing independent bookstore in Austin, Texas. And the following is an in conversation about book banning, how it affects all of us, how people are fighting against them, and how we can all learn from each other and work together to ensure that children everywhere have the ability to access the books that they need. Before we listen to the in conversation, I'd like to introduce Charlie Rejsek. Charlie is the CEO of Book People in Austin, Texas, the largest independent bookstore in the state. She's from rural East Texas and has been slinging books since she was 18, around 25 years now. She wholeheartedly believes that books save lives, which is why she will fight book banning efforts in all ways to ensure that these important stories are not silenced and everyone has access to books. And I'd also like to introduce Dominique Rocca. Dominique is the entrepreneurial publisher and CEO of Sourcebooks, the company she founded from her home in 1987. Dominique has won every innovation award that the industry gives and was named Publishers Weekly Person of the Year in 2016. Sourcebooks was ranked as one of the best workplaces for innovators by Fast Company. Sourcebooks has created scores of New York Times bestsellers, hundreds of national bestsellers, and #1 selling titles in perennial categories. Dominique is deeply interested in expanding readership, creating a world of readers, and connecting authors and readers in new ways. And now I'm turning it over to Dominique and Charlie.
Well, Charlie, I'm so excited to be talking to you today. We've only just met, so thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today and to talk to all of the folks that are part of our bookish community around what's going on for you and your fellow booksellers in Texas. So I'd love for you to start at, I know that you've worked really hard to fight the recent bill that unfortunately ended up passing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that bill is and how it could affect you specifically and the entire country?
Yes, most definitely. Thanks for inviting me to have this conversation. It's definitely something that I do feel like people need to hear in the book industry about how to respond when they are attacked out of the blue, the way that we were. And so HB 900, House Bill 900, which was actually just signed into law by our governor last week, requires book vendors like bookstores, like Book People, to identify and label books that are sexually explicit and sexually relevant before selling them to schools, as well as retroactively rating all of the books that were sold in the past and are still in circulation for checkout in school and classroom libraries. Books that are rated sexually explicit cannot be sold to schools, and they must also be recalled from any schools that we've ever sold them to in the past. So our challenge here is that book vendors like bookstores were just not able to comply with the requirements as outlined. For Book People specifically, we've been in business for almost 53 years, and we've never been required to keep records of the reasons why books were being purchased, because that really feels like business overreach. And we have no idea how many books we've sold to school districts, much less which ones ended up in circulation for checkout in this model that they're targeting. We also sell books at events like the Texas Book Festival, where educators from across the state come and stock up on signed books for their schools. We have no record of which of those hit libraries, which hit classroom libraries. So where we are is that since we know that we cannot comply with these guidelines as written, the book banners, that's what I call them, they're already looking at who could possibly comply, and that points to the publishers because they're considered content creators in our supply chain. And so while this bill was written for Texas, it affects all book vendors that sell to Texas schools. And it's not just vendors that are located in the state of Texas. So by forcing national vendors to create these rating systems, then it becomes basically the flick of a pen for any other state to sign on for their ready-made rated package. The author of the bill, named Representative Patterson, he called it the model legislation for the rest of the country in his interview with a local news station. So that should really tell you what you need to know about his goal in writing this bill.
So one of the things that really interested me as you were talking is the potential ramifications of the new law. So what happens if you're found to not be complying with this law? What are the ramifications, for potential ramifications for you or for potentially publishers?
So in the bill, it stated that we will be fined and we will be banned from working with the entire school district. It doesn't say how much the fine is, and it doesn't say what the banning covers. We don't know if that means if we can do book fairs, because we don't sell books to the schools through the book fair program. We sell to the students. But if we're banned with working with the district, then chances are they're not going to be able to book book fairs with us either. It also affects school events, right? We bring authors into schools for events. We will not be able to do that either. So it would really just cut us off from working with all of our school districts moving forward.
This is just mind-boggling.
It's
just absolutely.
It's bonkers.
I have
when I told people
language,
about
yeah.
this, yes, when I told people about this bill when it was first proposed, everybody told me it's a trash bill. And I'm like, but it's not, because it's moving through the process. Trash bills don't move through the process, and this one is.
Wow. Okay, so it's an effective methodology for banning both booksellers and specific book content. And I was wondering if, as my favorite booksellers, if you wouldn't mind describing how book banning really harms our communities. I think that's sometimes, implicitly omitted. Like, we just take book banning is bad. We all agree book banning is bad. Yep. But I think your view on that might be very, very useful for all of us.
Sure. I do want to preface this by stating that we also agree that sexually explicit content should not be in schools, right? And so that's not what we're trying to do by saying that we're against this bill. What we're trying to say is that the lack of access to books hurts everyone, period. When a book gets challenged or banned, what that means is someone else is trying to decide what is best for everyone based on their beliefs or their feelings. And no one should have that right for everyone. And it's not just the student that's missing the opportunity to see themselves in a storyline that they might not have seen before. It's also hiding the story and silencing the voice of the person that wrote the book. It's silencing their experience, that they were brave enough and willing to share with others in the hopes of helping them to navigate their own situations, which can seem hopeless to those that are actually living in those situations. David Lenahan, he wrote a great piece for Publishers Weekly at the end of April, outlining the long-term effects of these banning efforts. And I think he really put it very succinctly to the long-term effects, in that the plan to sanitize our public school education and prevent ideological conformity will definitely have grave repercussions on our economy and our society. Banning knowledge that's been identified as potentially causing psychological distress reduces the ability of young people to engage in strategic analysis. And it deprives them of all the skills that are needed to cite arguments, state facts, and empirical evidence to validate their points of view. And such learning curves will create homogeneous and faulty conclusions that will lead to bad decisions in every profession. And I believe this wholeheartedly. I think that this is the goal in the banning of the books. Yeah.
Well, as you know, Charlie, I mean, Sourcebooks is books change lives, you know, so, and I'm here as a publisher. Yeah, exactly. I'm here as a publisher because, you know, the books I read as a kid and got to read. I'm here as a, you know, because of the libraries that helped foster that reading. So we're very attached here. I wanted to get your take, and I know that this is a little bit off the conversation we had planned, but I just wanted to get your specific take on what, you know, so I'm an immigrant. So one of the things that and this is known about immigrants, that we all read American history, but not all, but I mean, I've read a lot of American history. Many immigrants do. What's your view on the changes that are being proposed in the telling of American history by the state of Texas? Because I have to imagine that you have a point of view on that.
I mean, it's exactly what I just kind of outlined in what David Linehan outlined. Their goal is to write history in the way that they want it portrayed, and to silence any kind of uncomfortableness in our history. But the only way to move forward is to sit on the uncomfortableness and learn from it and talk about it to overcome it. And they just don't want to be uncomfortable in any situation.
God, I love that, Charlie. I mean, I love in order to move forward, you have to sit on the uncomfortableness. So, I mean, it's exactly I mean, I think that's so important. You have been dealing with book banning for years. What was your most important learning from fighting either this book ban or some previous ones? Is there something that you're particularly proud of, or something else that you wish you had done? Any of that?
Yeah. I will say the top point that I learned this legislative session is that the legislative arm of our government is not easy to navigate in any fashion. From the winding dead-end hallways of the Capitol to the inability to even find working email addresses to contact our representatives and our governor. I wanted to send a statement to our governor, and I could not find a working email address online. So I reached out to an organization called Mothers Against Greg Abbott, and it's just a local collection of badass mamas fighting to make a change for families, schools, and neighbors. And they don't have his email address. I reached out to a chief of staff of a senator that I was working with. He didn't have the governor's email address. I had to print it out and snail mail my statement to the governor in order to tell him why this bill is not feasible. I learned that when an expert in the field of the bill that is targeted, like a book vendor, testifies about the infeasibility of a bill, they don't listen. I learned that when thousands of people contact their elected officials about how a bill is bad for the community, along with 16 people testifying in person against it, versus 11 people that were for it, and 163 people registering against it, while only 9 people registered for it, that the legislators are going to do whatever that their party is telling them to do. I learned that as hard as you fight and all of the expertise that you share in the field, they can and will choose to not listen. And so what I'm particularly proud of is literally just standing up and testifying against this bill. There were 3 book vendors that testified in person. 2 were from Book People, and 1 was from a large bookstore chain. She was not able to say who she worked for. They weren't even willing to pay her to be there, so she took a vacation day to testify. We were the targets of the bill, and there was literally no voice given to the target other than our 3 voices. I don't know what else I could have done at this point. I have literally been fighting this bill since the end of March in some form or fashion. I went to the Texas Librarians Association at the end of March or beginning of April. I got my business cards into the hands of as many publishers as possible. I spearheaded a last-minute panel at a regional conference where a lot of Texas booksellers were in the same room. And fighting this bill actually took precedence over strategic planning for our organization, because booksellers are just people, and we can only do so much.
Well, but I mean, I think it's incredible how much you've done, right? I think you've been a stand for the, for the proliferation and the development of books in the state of Texas. I mean, that actually is what we do every day, is to work on behalf of readers and on behalf of students, and it's an absolutely extraordinary accomplishment. Do you have any lessons that you think that advocates in other states might learn from what you're, since it's possible that this is a blueprint model legislation for other states? Is there anything that advocates in other states might learn from your efforts?
I will say that if you find yourself in this position of fighting on behalf of your business due to a legislative attack, the first thing I recommend is to find someone who's gone through this before and connect with them as early as possible. Through this whole process, it was the blind leading the blind. I was reaching out to publishers, I was reaching out to other Texas bookstores, my regional association. I was just asking for help from anyone who would give it. Most of the publishers I reached out to, I'll admit, they were the top 5 because I was looking for the people who could afford to take this on. I was able to get a response. The ones I was able to get a response from pushed me to the general counsel at the Association of American Publishers. I was able to get him on a Zoom call with one of our representatives, along with a lot of other community stakeholders in the room in early April. But then afterwards, I was told it was a hyper-local issue that I needed to fight with local allies on. But in my opinion, a bill that attacks all bookstores in a state really shouldn't be considered hyper-local. I hope that the ABA...
Particularly not when it's supposed to be model. I mean, we know how this... We know exactly how this blueprint is going to work, right?
We do. We do. Yes. And I was able to get a meeting with the policy director of the Speaker of the House. And I was in the room and a librarian was in the room. And when they said, can publishers do this? There wasn't a publisher in the room to say they couldn't do it. So I said publishers couldn't do it, but I don't know if they believed me because I'm not a publisher. I just really hope that the ABA is compiling a list of bookseller resources for booksellers who have gone through this and continue to go through these challenges, because other booksellers are gonna need support. This took me away from running my business for so long.
Yeah, and Charlie, Skip Dye has done an incredible job over at PRH, which, as you know, is a partner of Sourcebooks, is doing a kind of a very good and very thorough approach for libraries, but we need exactly the same thing for booksellers. We really do. You're absolutely right. We need to kind of, and that was the next question I had for you is, as book ban attempts ramp up, how do you hope to see community members beyond just booksellers and librarians step up to take meaningful action?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that so many people are being attacked legislatively on so many fronts. And so it's really hard to put the onus of this on the community to always know when their access to books is being attacked and what they should do, because everyone is fighting their own battle, including booksellers in our stores are fighting other battles for their identity as well. And so I think that those who are stakeholders in the book community, whether it be monetarily like publishers and vendors like bookstores, or mission-driven organizations like nonprofits that forward literacy, I think they could join together to fight these bans. That 100% includes community calls to action, but we're the experts in our field. We keep up with the trade news every day. So we need to step it up and use our expertise to dissect these attacks, inform our community of how they are being affected by them, and give them straightforward calls to action that are easy. I'm going to give you a perfect example. The Llano County Public Library in Llano, Texas, their county officials called a special meeting to discuss the closure of their library system, and there was less than 3 days notice for their community. If you're a resident in Llano and you're out of town on vacation, or you just like weren't watching the news, how were you supposed to know this? If you were maybe on your local bookseller's mailing list and they sent out an email with one-click option, email your person by clicking this button because this is what's at stake right now. That's where we fit in. It takes a village and everyone has their role, but ours is to protect the access of books for our community of readers. We need to tell them what to do because this is our job.
Do you, again, this is just me asking you, Charlie, do you believe that this issue has been well publicized even in Texas? Like, do you think people in Texas know this is happening?
No, and I'm going to say that I'm very disheartened because after the bill was signed, I heard an NPR story about it, and it made it sound positive because they called it like, it's getting rid of all the sexual content in the libraries. And I'm like, y'all don't even really know what you're reporting.
Oh my God. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And
Okay.
so whose responsibility is that? My responsibility to reach out to them to educate all the media? Whose responsibility? Now I feel like it's mine because no one else did it. And you're
Very
talking
clear.
about,
It's not
yeah.
yours, but I mean, it's very clearly like, if they, and that's really, because I was thinking about it. So a couple of data pieces that we have is that, well over 2/3 of Americans are against book bans. And I think this can easily be framed as a, just a sideways attempt at book banning. So I don't know that if the number is wildly disproportionate in Texas. I have trouble believing that Texas is 63% for book bans or 67% for book bans. Seems unlikely to me, but we can go and find that out. But it seems to me
this bill has not been marketed as a book ban in any fashion other than by the book vendors. This has been marketed by every legislator as well as media as removing sexual content from school library shelves.
it's a very small
we all
example.
agree. Yes, it is. It's part of their playbook. That's why they're using this as model legislation. It has nothing to do with the color of the skin of the people in the book or their identities. It has to do with sexual content, which everyone can agree explicit material doesn't belong in schools. And that's how they got everyone on board. I agree with that as well. I just don't agree with the way that they're doing. And I know that this is a problem that's a non-problem. They brought up books, titles that are, and they say these are sexually explicit, and none of those are in school libraries. You could pick any book off the shelf and say it's sexually explicit, but that doesn't mean it's in a school library.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's always been, sort of one of the hallmarks of the right, is to create non-problems and to make them extreme, right? So that everybody can everybody can agree. This is really very disheartening. Thank you, Charlie, for enlightening all of us, and also for your incredible effort on this. I mean, I know how much work this was. I can only imagine, and it's going to continue to be work. So thank you for both the work you've already put in and the work I suspect you will continue to put in. So thank you so much for speaking.
You're so welcome. And to tell you that this is one of those things where I didn't even feel like there was an option. This came up and I'm like, we can't not do this. I didn't see on any other path. Yeah.
Totally agree. Thank you so much for your time. And we will send over the clips and all the materials to you so that you can share far and wide, and look forward to seeing you when I'm next in Austin. Take good care.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Charlie, on behalf of everyone at Sourcebooks, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to help educate us about what's going on in your community and giving us new insights and tools that we can all use to help fight these bans in our own communities. Now, let's hear some authors talk about their books. I think it's very appropriate to start off with Raj Haldar, since his newest book is called This Book is Banned. Charlie, on behalf of everyone known by his stage name Lush Life, Raj Haldar is a critically acclaimed rapper, composer, and multi-hyphenate creator. He's the #1 New York Times bestselling author of P is for Pterodactyl and the Word Traveler's early reader adventure series. Raj lives on the Upper West Side of Manhattan with his wife and 2 young daughters. You can connect with him on Instagram at lush.vita. And Christina McMorris is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of Sold on a Monday with more than 1 million copies sold. At age 9, she became the weekly host of an Emmy Award-winning kids educational TV program. To date, her novels have garnered more than 20 national literary awards. Raj, Christina, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Just telling Raj right before this that I am visiting my parents in San Diego, which will explain why there are not bookshelves behind me, but instead lots of wine. So after this, you all come over and we'll have a party. So picture books. Can't wait to tell you a bit about our books. And so we'll kick it off today with Raj explaining a bit about This Book is Banned.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Excited to be here, and I will be over for that wine. Where are you, Oregon?
Usually Oregon, but I'm in San Diego today.
San Diego, you said, okay. Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about This Book is Banned. So, as most of you know, over the last few years, we've seen books being banned in schools and libraries across the country at an alarming rate. Last year alone, the ALA recorded like double the number of book bans and challenges than from the previous years, which does not bode well. And as a picture book author, I was dumbfounded to see so many books being banned that were for our youngest readers, picture books, being censored by a small group of folks that want to quell diverse voices from reaching our kids. And since our youngest readers are in the crosshairs and being impacted by book bans, I felt like it was important to create a book that serves as a lighthearted kind of entry point to help kids understand the dangers of censorship and book banning on their lives. So with This Book is Banned, I've tried to create a fun, fourth wall breaking, meta kind of picture book about a book that's being banned in real time. To give you a sense of it, in this book, the hippos think the giraffes are getting all the leaves, and so giraffes are banned. And the big bad wolf is too scary, banned. And one kid thinks avocados are yucky, they're banned permanently for everyone. So through all that kind of zany fun, there's also a surprise ending that I hope will get kids thinking about and allow important discussions to start about book banning and censorship. Spoiler alert, after everything in the book has been banned, the last page is blank and there's nothing left to read. So this book is banned in a nutshell. Christina, I'm excited to hear about your upcoming picture book, Ellie Mae Dreams Big.
Yeah, thank you. Your book is so important. So I'm so excited to see it out on the shelves. Ellie Mae Dreams Big, I'm thrilled about especially because it is a collaboration with my youngest sister, Amanda Yoshida, who is this amazing picture book illustrator. She does that full time. And so we decided to join forces, and I couldn't be more excited. I will say we still love each other and like each other after the book is over, which is a nice testament to our relationship. And the story, I will say, is about a little girl named Ellie May, obviously, who has a terrible time making decisions. So when she is given a school assignment, the standard of what do you want to be when you grow up, come dressed as your favorite choice, this is a nightmare. So we gave the story a bit of a, we hope, clever twist in that she starts brainstorming ideas. She can't decide between an astronaut and a chef, for example, until she remembers the moon is made of cheese. And she's going to take a slice out of that and make the best galactic grilled cheese sandwiches in the galaxy, and she'll serve it in a fly-through for the aliens. So from there, she keeps brainstorming other ideas that she keeps meshing together that we got a kick out of creating, and ultimately then has a lot more choices to pick from at the end, and having to whittle it down to one is a big challenge. And so we hope that the reader is as surprised by her answer as much as her classmates are. So that is our story, and we're excited for it to come out in January.
So awesome. I took a peek at the book earlier today, and I was just like blown away by what a creative way you thought up of encouraging kids to think differently. And it got me thinking about, when I talk to creators of children's books, I love to kind of understand what their inspirations are in terms of like what kids' books they loved growing up. And so I'd be interested to know what your favorite book as a child was.
Yeah. So, well, and I will say thank you for touching on the fact that a big message of our story too is empowering, just like yours, empowering in that you can be anything you set your mind to, and you can accomplish anything like yours that you set your mind to. So along those lines, as a kid, I would say that some of my favorite books that immediately come to mind would be Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, which is so fun that it is now a movie. And I think that inspired so many girls my age. And then on top of that, the other ones that I still enjoy would be The Giving Tree, Alexander, and The Horrible, Terrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. I hope I said that right. It was just a really, really bad day. So those are some of my favorites. And Shel Silverstein's Where the Sidewalk Ends. I think I still know that ickle me, pickle me, tickle me too, like poem in my brain. So what about you? What were some of your favorites?
Wow, well, talking about banned books, Judy Blume and Shel Silverstein, I think I've seen on many lists over the years, and sadly, but also some of my favorites. It's funny with this question, kind of as I was working on what would become This Book Is Banned, I've been thinking a lot about for my next project, like, kind of what do I want to do with the form of a picture book, and I knew I kind of wanted to attack things differently than I had before. And I started thinking about what books I loved as a kid. And I kept coming back to the Sesame Street classic, The Monster at the End of This Book, which is the one, if you remember, where Grover is kind of breaking the fourth wall, trying to dissuade kids from finishing the book. And so you can see how, the sort of concept of that is a big inspiration for me and with this one. But the aha moment was when I kind of put that aspect together, the format together with the kind of gravely serious topic of book banning, and then it sort of crystallized and synthesized in this way where I was like able to use this zany format that I think kids will love to really kind of approach a very serious topic. And speaking of inspirations, are there any real life inspirations from your life for your book?
Yes. So there are two. The first one would be my oldest son, who is now a freshman in college and is still having a hard time making decisions. Thankfully, he picked a major, so that's good. But other than that, I remember as a kid, oh my gosh, every parent understands the torture of standing in front of that Chuck E. Cheese price counter and spending an hour there while he picked his favorite toy of all time that broke on the way home immediately after. And the other part of that really came from also my own career aspirations, we'll call them, when I was a kid. I remember distinctly lowering it down to my two favorites, which were, and I was torn here, between a belly dancer and a nun. Now, mind you, I wasn't Catholic, but that was not going to stop me because I like them both for the same reason. And that is, I liked their outfits. So, I'm glad I didn't mesh them though. That would have been interesting. So what about you, Raj? What inspiration did you draw from?
Well, so with my past picture books like P is for Pterodactyl, I wasn't a parent yet, so I was mostly kind of mining from my own childhood experience. But now that I have a 3-year-old running around our apartment, I've been able to get really attuned to the kinds of goofy characters and situations that connect with kids. And so in that way, my daughter's big inspiration for the proceedings in this book is banned with, kind of unicorns and avocados and birthday cakes and roller skating robots that make up this kind of kaleidoscope of the vibe of this book. And I guess more broadly, the inspiration for this book has been seeing librarians and educators over the last couple of years putting their jobs on the line to ensure that kids have access to a diversity of voices. I wanted to use my platform to create This Book is Banned for Them as a way to get young readers thinking about the dangers of curtailing free speech. So Christina, it was great to chat with you about This Book is Banned and to learn about Ellie Mae Dreams Big. Now I'm going to toss it back to Kay to introduce the next set of authors.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Raj and Christina. I could listen to you guys chat all day. Next, we've got a really fun graphic novel extension of our best-selling How to Catch brand, and we've got something a little bit different for you this time. We're going to have our publishing manager and our creative director talk to you about this new program that we're launching, since they are the creative geniuses behind it. Karen Shapiro is the senior publishing manager for Wonderland. She's been with Sourcebooks for 9 years and gets to spend every day making books. She works on the How to Catch series, books by Sandra Magzamin, and gets to partner with Sesame Street on exciting books for younger children. Jordan Cost is the creative director of children's for Sourcebooks Kids. She's been with the company for 6 years and has loved every moment of making so many incredible books for children, including those in the world of How to Catch. Karen and Jordan, so excited to have you here with us. Karen, why don't you start us off?
Okay, thanks so much. Maybe the way that we begin is we talk just a little bit about how the series came to be for Pup and Dragon. And we have been so delighted across all of Sourcebooks, and certainly Jordan and I have been thrilled with the reception of How to Catch and how children all over the world have taken to this series. And there's such an incredible fan base. We wanted to find a way to extend that adventure as these children continue to grow and became independent readers. How could we continue and deliver the silliness, the fun, the zaniness, and the love of that series, and eventually came to graphic novel for 6 to 9-year-olds is the place for us to grow this series. And we've been thrilled, and it's been so much fun working on that. So I am going to toss to Jordan, our creative director for all of children's books here at Sourcebooks, and I'm going to ask you a question, Miss Jordan. As this series, Pup and Dragon for How to Catch, is graphic novel, is this the first graphic novel series that, as creative director, you developed for Sourcebooks?
Yes, we have developed a few at Sourcebooks with publishing partners as co-editions, but Pup and Dragon was the first that we started from the ground up. Graphic novels have just been gaining momentum in the kids space for the past few years, and I know we have all been looking at the space and trying to determine what is the first entry point for source books that makes the most sense for us to do from the ground up. And How to Catch made sense to all of us internally. And then when you looked at the hundreds of reviews for these books online, our readers were asking for it. They were constantly saying, what's next, what's coming next, or gatekeepers and parents and teachers and librarians were saying, my kids love the picture books, you guys should level these up. So it was really natural for that to be our first foray into the graphic novel space. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Once we landed on it needed to be How to Catch.
Right.
Across all of the How to Catch books, which I believe there are something like 33 in existence.
Yeah, I think so.
How did you come to choose Pup the dog from How to Catch a Mermaid and Dragon, the bearded dragon, from How to Catch a Class Pet, from the many characters and creatures we've met in the series?
I love that question. Yes, Pup existed in Mermaid and made guest appearances in a few other books in the background, puppying around in scenes. And we thought, what a delight that would be for children. I would have loved that, to have seen, oh, that pup was in one of the picture books, and now look, he's in my more grown-up books. And we did a lot of research. Data drives everything here at Sourcebooks. And in our investigating, we found that a bearded dragon was the #1 class pet, and was also among the highest ranking pets when children ask to have a pet for themselves. That the #1 ranking there was bearded dragon. And there was something utterly delightful about that size difference between having a little character and the bigger character. And then we went about, okay, we're going to structure a best friend relationship, and looked at, let's make sure there are differences between the two that express exactly what children move through. And there are some children that are introverted, some children that are extroverted, and these characters represent that. That Dragon is a little more introverted. He's snarky, he's super bright, and at his core loves his best friend. He loves Pup. And Pup is unbridled enthusiasm, a complete extrovert who will come barreling into any situation. Both have a silly side, both absolutely, through every story, are fully committed to their best friend. When things are going well, when things are not going well, they are there for their best friend and for the kids that are from the How to Catch picture books. And that's what we really wanted to convey, this incredible friendship between these two different and equally funny and silly characters. And that has been an absolute delight to develop. And Jordan, you've been a huge part of that. So I can say a bunch of words, as I frequently do, but then I come to you as creative director and say all of that I was just rabbiting on about, you've got to convey visually. So how did you go about getting those characters created?
Yeah, it was, this is one of those peek behind the curtain situations where, when you watch how they made a Pixar movie and it took years worth of research and development and everything, all of those things that you were saying, we sat down and thought about all the needs for the characters, even down to that like scale difference between the two. So I would say we spent close to 6 months deep into research, testing art styles, looking at different illustrators, how many different versions of those characters that we went through to make sure that everything from the line weight to the expressions to the poses to each one demonstrating uniquely a certain emotion or reaction to a situation. We did all these emotion tests with them, if you remember, like how does Pup look when he's angry? How does Dragon look when he's angry, when they're angry? And really nailing those proportions and the scale of the two characters against one another. you know, all of that time was so valuable, because I think once we had that, it was like almost like when it clicked, the world just opened up into, now here's how we take these two characters and launch them into the first story that we're going to introduce readers to. And on that topic, let's talk about your acquisitions and development strategy on this. What were you thinking when you decided that we would launch 3 of these fully developed at once versus just putting out a single title?
We just push the big easy button. This too is based on data. We know this audience, this rabid fan base, certainly this age group, when they become attached to a series, they want more and more and more, and they want it quickly. And as we were continuing the How to Catch adventure, we wanted them to be able to, okay, you love this first Pup and Dragon book as an independent read. This entire series is about, we want to keep instilling a love of books and a love of reading. And they are silly and funny and zany. We thought, okay, we're going to roll out with 3. And then very quickly, as Jordan knows, who has given up sleep, we have another 3 right behind it, because we know that if children become attached to this, they want the next one and the next one and the next one. And quite honestly, it's just a lot of fun to pull these together and work on them. They are, if you can't have fun making these kinds of books that are silly and still full of heart, then, you know, I don't know what to say. This is just a joy to get to do every single day.
I agree. I don't know if I've laughed out loud so much while working on a series of books. I mean, they're just, every single one, you know, they surprise me, and it's just, they're so funny and they're such a great read. I can't wait to see how kids respond to them, because we've had some behind the scenes kids reading and watching how they react, and it's been so cool.
Yes, that's been delightful, seeing children's, looking at the sketch phase that you and your team developed and laughing out loud at what was occurring on those pages, which is exactly what we want to see happen, that delight and joy as they move page after page and continue developing that love of books. So Jordan, this has been a blast. I've had a lot of fun. I could keep talking to you for the whole rest of the day, but I'm sure Kay has other plans. So I'm going to toss it back to Kay.
Thank you so much, Karen and Jordan. Now we're going to move into YA books that will destroy you with the absolutely lovely author of 1,000 Boy Kisses, Tilly Cole. Tilly is both an independent and traditionally published author and writes many genres, including contemporary romance, dark romance, YA, and new adult. When she's not writing, Tilly enjoys nothing more than spending time with her little family, curling up on her couch watching movies, drinking far too much coffee, and convincing herself that she really doesn't need that last square of chocolate. Tilly, will you tell us about 1,000 Boy Kisses?
Hi, I'm Tilly Cole, and I have been asked to give some background on my inspiration for 1,000 Boy Kisses. So obviously the story is centered around cancer and childhood illness and loss and grief. And basically a few years back, I have a very small family, and at the same time my Nana, Granddad, Mum and Dad all, my Nana died first of cancer, and very shortly after, my Granddad, my Mum and my Dad all actually had received cancer diagnoses within the same 1.5 to 2 years. And were very much fighting for their life in what would have taken away a majority of my family. So Poppy's grandmother in the book is very much based on my Nana and the relationship I have with her, and the rest of the book was just born from kind of like what emotions I was feeling at the time, and the book became a really cathartic process for me to kind of exercise some of the feelings I was feeling about like fear of loss, and kind of trying to wrap my head around how this had happened and what the future might look like. So Poppy's character is very positive, and she was kind of like the ideal for me, as in how, you know, someone could deal with a diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis. And Rune's character is very much kind of how I felt at times, a lot of my family felt, where we just couldn't believe that it was happening, and we refused to believe that those who were given a terminal diagnosis would leave us. So every main kind of scene within, and in that time we lost my father-in-law to cancer. So every major scene that you see or read in A Thousand Boy Kisses was actually based on a real event. So things like she goes in a coma at one point, and then also just some of the conversations that were said, kind of some of the spiritual talk, even the idea that you even have to address what comes after, and things such as that. They were all very much based on real things in my life at that time, with various family members who I sadly lost, except for my mum. She was the only one who managed to get put in remission for hers. So the story means a lot to me. It's a very, very personal book for me. And yeah, I can't wait to have it out to the masses, because the one thing that I've realised through putting it out as an indie author is just how many people relate to not even just cancer, just illness in general, losing people, grief, loss. I suppose it was my way of trying to give some meaning to what is a horrific situation. And obviously the epilogue, a bit more spiritual. So I was putting a little bit of my own, what I wish could happen afterwards. I hope that helps fill in some gaps. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tilly. Next, we have more YA for you. Historical fantasy from 2 New York Times bestselling authors, and a thrilling debut from a voice you'll want to discover. Megan Lally is a professional book coach who loves writing all things creepy and twisted. She lives in the Pacific Northwest with her family, and this is her debut novel. Sarah Rash is the New York Times bestselling author of the Snow Like Ashes series, These Rebel Waves and These Divided Shores. You can visit her online at www.sarahrashbooks.com and at @csarahwright on Twitter. Beth Revis is a New York Times bestselling author with books available in more than 20 languages. She writes science fiction, fantasy, and contemporary novels, including Across the Universe, Star Wars Rebel Rising, Give the Dark My Love, and A World Without You. A native of North Carolina, Revis lives in a rural corner of the state with her son and husband. Thank you so much, Megan, Sarah, and Beth. Take it away.
So let's start with Beth and Sarah. Why don't you guys tell me a little bit, or tell everyone a little bit about Night of the Witch?
Yeah, we are super excited for Night of the Witch. So Night of the Witch tells the story of Fritzy, who is one of the last surviving members of her coven that at the beginning of the book is attacked by a band of rogue Hexenjägers or witch hunters. And Fritzy goes on a journey to get revenge, and things don't always go according to plan. And I will give it over to Beth to talk about the other angle of Night of the Witch.
Yeah, one of the major things that don't go according to plan is that one of the Hexenjägers, the Zealot Witch Hunters, is Otto, who is the character that I write. And he's been tasked with bringing Fritzy in. But the problem is he's not actually a loyal Hexenjäger. He's trying to bring down the organization from within. So his plans to destroy the Hexenjäger units have been completely befuddled by Fritzy's plans to just bring chaos and burn everything to the ground. And it's just chaos from there on out. But Megan, tell us about your book.
Oh, okay. So That's Not My Name is a YA thriller. It's my debut, and it's dual point of view. part of the story is a girl who wakes up in a ditch by the side of the road, and she has no idea how she got there or who she is, or has no memory before the ditch. And she's brought to the police station where her dad shows up to collect her, and he's got all the documents proving who she is and all the things, and he takes her home. But as she starts to remember things, they don't really fit with what her dad has told her about her life, and she starts to wonder if she is actually safe where she is. And the other point of view is a boy who lives 60 miles away, and his girlfriend Lola went missing 5 weeks ago, and the entire town thinks he's responsible because he was the last one to see her alive and well. So when it becomes clear they're not looking for her anymore, he sets off to find her himself, and they all kind of end up in the same spot, and it doesn't go great.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask you guys some questions.
Yep, let's do it.
Okay. Was there a scene in particular that you remember when you were drafting that was the most fun? Your favorite scene? If it's not too spoilery, you can give me like a general, like, oh, it was in this part of the story.
I think for me, writing any scene with, so Fritzy, one of the motivating things for her in this book is she's trying to rescue her cousin, who's one of the other surviving members. It's just the two of them. And her cousin is this 12-year-old little girl, and writing any scene with Liesl in it was just so much fun because she's a witch and her affinities with fire, and she would just like burn everything and everyone all the time. And she just cares about, she takes her head on nothing, and she is just a disaster, and I love her so much.
Yeah, Liesl's one of my favorite characters too. I really like, there's this scene where Otto is trying to win Liesl over to his favor, and he carves her a little animal like out of wood, like, here's a little toy for the gift for the child so she won't burn me alive. And it doesn't go as you would think, and I love that we ended up being able to put that in the sequel as well. So there's a far preview for you.
That's awesome. I love it when like a specific character that you knew was going to be part of the story kind of takes on a life of their own, and then they become like your favorite person. I love that so much. What about new book ideas? How do they typically come to you? Are you a notes app with 100 ideas type people, or are you one book idea every 18 months and you just latch onto it and hope for the best?
Oh gosh, I have so many constant.
Yeah.
I think we started talking at the same time. We're the same brain.
Yeah, well, for me, if it's by myself, I tend to be like a one idea person. I'll just kind of obsess about it. But one of the really cool things about writing with somebody else and writing with Sarah is that we would bounce ideas off of each other and constantly like one up each other on like how intense a scene could be and how romantic can the scene can be and how like disturbing can we make our main villain. And we were constantly one upping each other. So it was one main idea of the witch trials that started in Trier, and what if the witches were actually real and could do magic, but then it sort of spun and grew and grew and grew as we were bouncing off of each other.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the best things of having a co-author is when you're writing solitary, you start with an idea and it's only in your own brain and churning, and eventually you get like maybe your agent to help you with it or your editor to help you with it, but that's like farther down the line. And to have a co-author, you have somebody immediately right there helping you make it and hone it and like get the best version of it. So it's way better to have, it's way more interesting of a process to have a co-author with you.
Mm-hmm. This wasn't actually a planned question, but it's like a, part B to this one. Do you guys find it easier or harder to co-author versus writing by yourselves?
I'm a delight to work with, aren't I, Sarah?
I think there are certain aspects that are a lot easier. Half the book is not your problem. You only have to write half of it and worry about half of it. And you have somebody's whole other brain who knows the story as intimately as you do right there. So whenever there's a problem, there's immediately somebody that you can talk to and work things out with, which makes it so much the process so much easier.
Yeah, and then we could focus on like the stuff that we like the best. So whenever there was a magic complication, I would just be like, here is this magic problem, Sarah, you do it. But then whenever there was like a historical detail, she'd be like, I'm not sure if this is historically accurate. And I'm like, let me research things from the 1700s. So it worked out.
Yeah, you can divide and conquer.
Awesome. I love that. And then I guess my last question is, what is your most and or least favorite part of the writing process? Are you guys more drafter heavy or revision lovers?
Oh gosh, I think my least favorite is whatever I'm doing at the moment.
Right. That was absolutely
I
going
want
to
to
be
be
my
edited.
yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is when the book is done and then I don't have to deal with it anymore and it's completely out of my hands.
Right now, it's great right now. Everything's amazing with Night of the Witch right now. We don't have to worry about it at all. It's done.
Yes.
That makes sense. I think a lot of people feel that way too. They're like, I don't love having drafted, or I don't love drafting, but I love having drafted or like revising or whatever comes next. So, all right, that's all my questions.
All right. Well, we'll turn it around to you. So your story has a lot to do with memory. How did you play with that in your novel?
It actually came about really organically because the main first, spark of idea was this girl in a ditch. And originally I did not know how she ended up there. So it kind of spiraled from that place of like, she doesn't know anything. So her life could be anything and she could believe anything about her life. And so she does. And until evidence kind of comes in to contradict that. And so it's a lot of like those little threads that you think you know about your life because someone tells you about them. And you're like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I remember because I've been told what I remember. And then reality coming in and kind of breaking those into pieces. And so as the story goes along, it's almost like she becomes a different character because she remembers a little bit more about who she is as a person, and that directly impacts her decision making and what she's willing to overlook as the story continues. And then pretty soon she's not really willing to look past much because she knows too much.
And you said there were the 2 point of view characters. Was there a character that you liked writing better, that was easier to write to get into their head more than the other?
Yes, immediately, yes. So Drew was easier because he knows who he is and he knows what's at stake and he knows what's going on and he knows all the things. And so a lot of his day-to-day is impacted by memories and hurt and wondering where she is and if she's okay, or like having nightmares about like bodies in the woods and stuff and how that impacts his day. Whereas writing for my amnesia character, who is, as far as she knows, Mary, writing for Mary was much harder because she has no idea who she is. So day to day, she doesn't have memories impacting her life. She doesn't know anything. So I had to really focus on what was happening specifically in the scene. And that's all she can interact with because she doesn't know anything else about anything. She doesn't even know what kinds of food she likes. So it's really difficult to write from the perspective of someone who doesn't know herself, because then I don't know her either. And so Drew was much, much, much easier.
So I have to ask, like, how much of this did you have planned? Like, did Mary as a character evolve as you were writing her, or did you know from the start, like, exactly who she would end up being?
I kind of had a general idea of who she might have been when I was drafting, but because she didn't know, I didn't know either. So I had plot points. I'm a super plotter. Everything was like free. I think I had like a 20,000 word outline for this one, but it was all on plot specifics and like what she remembered when. It wasn't so much her as a person. So I had to go in and kind of make her not be a person initially. And then I discovered her as she discovered her. And then in a revision, who she was as a character, like when she has her memories back, changed drastically. So then I had to go back in a second time and change her entire point of view for the entire book to make that fit to that person that she was going to be later on. But when I was drafting, I very much did not know who she was, and neither did she. So it kind of worked out.
That's kind of fun. I feel like when you're writing a first draft, you're like discovering it. You keep writing because you want to figure out what happens. For like thriller horror, that's really fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of thriller and horror, this is your debut. Congratulations. That's amazing and exciting and terrifying and all the things. Did you always want to write like this kind of like thriller horror style books, or are you planning on like staying in this vein of genre?
I'm very good at the creepy stuff, so I think I'll stay here for a while. I do have a few ideas that lean more in the horror direction, but it's all kind of in the same basket of of really creepy things. When I'm getting really creeped out by my own writing, though, I do tinker with some adult romance ideas just because it's lighter and it's happier in my brain. I don't know if they'll ever be something that I pursue, but it makes me happy when I'm like really in the weeds of like, there's bodies in the woods and whatever. And I'm just like, I can't sleep. So then I'll do something happy, or I'll watch a rom-com or something. But I may eventually move in that direction, but I'm very comfortable right now doing the creepy stuff. It takes all of my thousands of hours of true crime binging and gives it something to be used for.
Excellent. I think that's about our time. So is there anything else you want to add about your story?
No, I think that's it. I really like it.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you so much to all of the librarians, educators, booksellers, and all of our publishing friends who joined us today. We can't tell you how much we appreciate your support. As a closing thought, don't forget to request these books from Edelweiss or NetGalley. And until next time, happy reading.